Gonna be interesting, this legislative session, because you're gonna have some people that are gonna be pushing, trying to force cities to do certain things.
Each session will probably be another step.
We had a conversation on billboards, and there's a group that's trying to get some support to push back on the billboard companies, and there isn't a representative or a senator that will even touch it. They're just totally afraid of the billboard lobbyists. Seriously, they just, they understand the problem, but they just go, we're not going there. And they're trying to
It was so fun. It was not relaxed.
have that look the same as real estate and eminent domain, and, you know, that there is a price at which you can literally get one out of your community if you
No, we
want.
took our kids, and that's why it was not relaxing. It was save them from waves and riptides and cliffs.
I mean, honestly,
It was
I
so
don't,
fun, though.
I don't really look at billboards
We will
anymore.
never forget it.
They're there, but maybe I'm just old and
Things.
You're gonna be my
senile, but
entertainment tonight. Sitting by you.
Families do their youth conference at home.
I know, and
Hear that after thing?
I
No,
remember,
no,
I remember
think
we
you
had,
could approach it from a public
Yep,
safety
and I was
point
like,
of view,
what?
and they wanna turn them all into,
How lazy.
you know,
And it was
electronic
such a
ones now,
wonderful
which
time.
to me
That's where we already had a
that
trip planned
exacerbates the
away, and that's
problem
where we did
because,
some
you
of the
know,
things,
I'll
saving
do
people
this,
from
you know, and
riptides.
shock
And
you
it was
and
just,
Veterans
it's
Day
all
ready.
become part
Yeah.
of the youth conference theme for us, and so it was.
We're ready, Mayor.
that's awesome.
Good to go? Wow, that's good. I have 7:29, so we're.
30 more seconds if you want
Okay.
to wait that, so.
Well, let's go ahead and get started. I mean, you all in favor of that? We'll start. Our grand audience here, let's,
Everybody here would be in favor.
well, I'd like to welcome you out to our city council meeting. We just completed a tree lighting ceremony, which is an annual event done by our Historical Society group and committee, and, you know, it's a small gathering, but it's a good gathering. So it was nice, and we've had one in the previous week that Randy kind of headed up and got people together, and it's down in our city park. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that, but
Looks great.
take advantage of it. I've received several calls on it, just appreciative of the efforts that the city has done, and it's good, so thank you.
For your support in that.
So let's go ahead and we'll start with an invocation by Councilmember Mike Vanchery, after which I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our kind Father in heaven, we are truly grateful to be here at our city council meeting tonight to discuss the important affairs of Lindon City. We are grateful for our city. We love it and appreciate all the hard work that all those who live here do, and the city staff and the council members and all those others who contribute, and the citizens who live here. We are thankful for our freedoms that we enjoy, and pray that those freedoms will be kept intact, that we will be able to do as we need to do and what's best for our community. We are thankful for this time of year and want to express special gratitude for our multitude of blessings and all the many things that thou hast given and done for us. We ask that thy spirit will be here tonight as we deliberate, that we'll be of one accord, and that we will enjoy the experience. And these things we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Will the audience please arise and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do that same thing at the UTA, and man, we're not as loud as we are here. I mean, it's nice and good, you know?
Oh, your iPad easier.
So, thank you. Let's go ahead and do a roll call, and Carolyn, would you start us off, please?
You too, Mayor. Carolyn Lundberg, present.
Mike Vanchery, present.
Van Broderick, present.
Jeff Acerson, present.
Jake Hoyt, present.
Randy Powell, present.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any, it doesn't look like we have any real announcements. council reports. You want to start us off, Randy? Oh, the minutes. Oh, yeah, thank you. Minutes of November 15th. Any corrections or additions?
I have no changes.
Wasn't
Should
new.
be in order.
I make a motion to approve the city council minutes of November 15th, 2021.
We have a motion by Van. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Randy. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Thank you. Let's go on to council reports. And Randy, you want to start us off?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, not a lot to report, just summarizing the events of this last week and the coming weeks with our Christmas celebration. Our theme, overarching theme is it's the most wonderful time of the year, and we kicked that off a week ago tonight with a tree lighting of the Lindon tree in the city park. That tree has been there since approximately the mid-60s, and about the same time as the Veterans Pavilion was erected. And it is a little leaf linden tree that represents our name, of course. And we had a wonderful gathering, several hundred people there, and a performance that was sponsored by Low Book Sales with Johannes Bonner of the Bonner family, which was a great hit. And I don't know if anyone was able to catch his performance, but it was well received by the residents. And Little Miss Lindon served cookies and hot apple cider, and it was a lovely night. So encourage anybody. It's going to be open throughout the season, and also the walking path, which Jake just took in with his family tonight, and we hope to be able to build off of that in the future. And just wanted to say again, thank you to the council for having an opportunity to have a representation of our city spirit along state streets so people recognize Lindon's holiday spirit. And then, of course, tonight, or in the middle of the week, last week, they had the Santa Parade, which was well received. And then they had the historical committee put on the traditional lighting of the Christmas tree, as the mayor so eloquently spoke there tonight. So appreciative of your contribution to that, Mayor Acerson. And then Saturday is the Santa Extravaganza. And then also the last to touch on is the letters to Santa, which I have to say I've spoken with Jamie, and these are the most tender letters that are coming in. Children asking for very tender things. That what a wonderful service that they have an opportunity to express it and get a nice letter back from Santa. So much appreciation for all the things that our staff does and the funding that our council provides for that. That's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you. Jake?
Similar things to report, just a lot of effort by our Parks and Rec department. I appreciate them. I'm curious, why was there 2 tree lightings? Are we competing events? Is it because that Historic Commission really wanted to do their version? Walk me through that. I had several residents ask me why we had 2.
That's one of the things, is trying to get some representation and some conflict. The goal is to try to find a way to mitigate that and merge them. But we were blessed to have this time span between Thanksgiving and what the Historical Commission was. This was the night that they were going to have it on, regardless, heck or high water. It was going to be on the first Monday of December. And so it was a very long lag. What it's going to be in the coming years, is to be determined, and we worked out to the best interest of the public and our funding. So that's what we're understanding, what we're trying to do. So.
That's good to know. Okay, appreciate that. Had the opportunity to attend the Santa Parade 4 different times. They went throughout the city. We met them in one spot, went to another. It was really such a cool event. I appreciate our Parks and Rec and their efforts. Love having us have a presence in Christmas. I think that was really inspired by you, Randy, and I love that. It's so fun. So we have a board meeting for the Chamber of Commerce this Wednesday. Something we don't always talk about, but if there's anything, looking forward to next year as it pertains to Chamber, let Carolyn know. Both of us sit on that board. And I think that's it for me.
Okay, Van?
Next water meeting with Central Utah Water is this Thursday.
That's right.
Thursday morning, 8 a.m. I'll be there.
Is it? No, that's a different one.
Different one.
Yeah,
But
gotcha.
so I'll plan on attending that and report back on that, what the next stage is, but that's it.
Okay, Mike?
Well, again, not a whole lot to report. We're in the process of doing our annual evaluation of Neil Schwendeman, the manager of the North Point Solid Special Services, the landfill. And Neil's doing a fantastic job. He set some 100-day goals when he was hired, and he's reached all of those, and in many cases surpassed them. He's just really a sharp individual, and so we'll complete that. We just approved our annual operating budget. We finished with a nice surplus, which we will need because of our aging equipment and so forth. And then this new year, we've got a very conservative budget, but it's one that certainly will meet and exceed. I was there Saturday, and the landfill is just as busy as it can be. You're still backed up almost to the road there, so. But yeah, it looks like it's doing well and so forth. So, and I need to, I'm not gonna apologize, but I need to explain. My wife and I have been called on a full-time mission to the Orem, Utah mission.
I can verify that. I saw him at the MTC.
That's right. And we've been in MTC training from sun up till sundown, and so, including today. So I haven't been as available for DRC meetings and other things like the parades and so forth. So for that, I apologize, but it's for a good cause. And it's certainly incumbent upon me to arrange my schedule in such a way that I can do both in a nice way, a good way. So, and I don't think there's anything else. Mike's got the planning department, economic development department under control, doing a great job. And I don't know, I have a question. Board of Adjustments, I never, ever had a discussion about that.
Not a lot of adjusting.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Can you anticipate a time when we would need adjusting?
I don't know if you can anticipate it. It's just as needed, so.
Okay, apparently it has been.
It has been a long time since they've needed to meet, so they would be the group that meets if there's a variance application request, or some appeals of certain decisions go to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
Within state statute, we can appoint an individual. What a lot of cities have done is you don't have to have a board. You can actually hire, what's been most common is for a city to contract and hire with a neighboring city's attorney that would act as that
Board of Adjustments.
appeals board, and so that individual. And that's something that we've talked about as staff and maybe beneficial for us to consider in the future. Because the board meets so infrequently, when we have met, it's kind of I haven't done this for a year, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, that's
kind of reaction.
my
And having
sense.
somebody that's more skilled and up to speed with some of the statutes and things, I think would be beneficial. So something that we could look at.
Well, let me have a private discussion with you and Mike, if that's okay, and you and Brian and Mike, and we can see where we want to head in that direction. Let's see, there was one other thing. On this Recollect recycling software, I did get a correspondence from the gentleman. I was thinking he was local here, so I said, let's set up a meeting, but he's actually in Vancouver. So Adam will be setting up,
do
you
a Zoom
and
meeting.
myself and Juan
Zoom?
will be setting up a Zoom meeting, which, by the way, I just learned how to do today at the MTC.
Good thing.
Yeah, good thing. So anyway, we'll get that on the agenda. So thank you. That's all I have.
All right, Carolyn?
All right, just wrap it up quickly here. We had a really wonderful employee Christmas party, and thank you to the department that was in charge of that this year. Was it?
It's planning.
It was planning department?
Yes.
Good job. Who's got the honors next year?
Police department. for the
Police
next 2 years.
department,
boy.
okay. All right. Yeah, that was wonderful to have the Pleasant Grove Youth Choir, Chamber Choir, which is their audition-only group, came and sang, and they were fantastic. Really nice to have them come out. And I attended a UVU event where the president there kind of shared some of the things that are going on. Just incredible expansion, things underway. They're really going to be a significant entity, even more than they already are. They're graduating a lot of engineering and STEM graduates, which is fantastic because there's a shortage of those here in the U.S. There is a kids youth program in the summertime. I had asked if we could start getting some of those communications and have some of our kids in the community maybe tie into those. And I also mentioned to them if they asked, what could we do for the cities? And just said, hey, not besides communicating what you have going on so we can support those and have people benefit from the programs there is, can you create any curriculum or a way to drive a pipeline into infrastructure jobs or police? And so they said, yeah, they have a few things, but they would look at that some more. And yes, the events that have been going on throughout the month have been great. Tonight, Alan said he took a rough count of about 220 some odd people there, the tree lighting. So that was a great turnout. And everything's just been beautiful and wonderful and love it. So thank you to all the staff that's been giving a lot of after hours time to help put these together for the community, and our council member who's really kind of helping take it up a notch. Great traditions. So that's all I have to share tonight. Thank you.
All right, Adam?
Just want to let you know that the leaf pickup, if you haven't seen on our Facebook account, we posted a picture. There's the pile of bags from the other day, 6,877 bags. It's a lot. And so then we contract with a landscape company that comes in and picks those up and puts it in a compost. And so I think it's a valued program. It seems like there's a lot of residents that really appreciate that. So just
Is
an
that over now?
November, it is over. And so we did
There's
have
still-
a couple.
Few bags.
Some
Still had
bags.
some bags out, and so we put something out that said people can take them down and add them to the pile. The gate's open during the daytime, and so if they want to go pick it up, or they can call Public Works, and Public Works will still come pick it up if they get a call and schedule a time to do that, so. Just FYI, Mike Florence, we've got you on the newsletter assignment for January, so does that work for you? Okay. Mayor, anything you want to bring up on the Thanksgiving dinner? Sounds like it was very successful.
Well, Kathy, as always, does an elegant job of just setting the tone and the whole setting, so wonderful. And we fed a lot of people. We had plenty of food. We're a little slow on the turkey. We had some, the Sweethearts rolls that I usually get were not available, so I got with Marvelous Catering and got their turkey breasts, and my wife and I had discussion on the timing of how long that needed, and she won and I lost, because won in the sense that we did it according to her time, and I lost because we weren't quite ready when the people came, but it all worked out. They got to visit a little bit longer, and the turkey was very moist and good and wonderful, and we had a lot of volunteers, which was amazing. I mean, just a lot of volunteers. We could have had more, but we would have been stumbling on top of each other, and we fed probably 400 on site and about 200 meals that went home to people that needed it. So, so it was pretty amazing. It was a good way to kind of end a Thanksgiving Day, so it was good.
Central Utah Water Conservancy District's holding a workshop about secondary water metering and billing options on January 27th. We've had Randy, Van, Mike, and Carolyn have all RSVP'd that they want to attend that. Jake, is that something you?
Yes, I do. I'm just trying to make sure it works with my schedule, but I do think I'll be attending that.
Okay, there's a registration fee, so we'll sign you up, and
Please
then
do.
my gut feeling is this may get a little bit technical into the numbers of things and calculations, but what seemed appealing was they had indicated some other elected officials from other communities would be there at some point. It's like a 4-hour window, so it was a pretty big window. If you need to come and go, I think that would be totally fine, is my assumption, so.
What you're really saying is just technical, we wouldn't understand, right?
No, I didn't mean that.
Good
but
sense, so you can.
4 hours is a long time to just talk about
Numbers.
rates and numbers, and so it might be a bunch of water engineers that put us all to sleep, but So that's a yes, Jake, you want us to sign you up?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
I've got it on the calendar.
And then just an FYI, maybe I could have the chief give a quick update on, we had a officer-involved shooting in Orem that one of our guys responded to, and I just wanted the council to know that our officers respond to heavy incidents like that in neighboring communities. We did have an officer that was just out front when the shooting occurred and actually administered CPR to the victim in that shooting. And that's a traumatic issue. And so our guys, as peaceful as Lindon can be, are not exempt from experiencing those really traumatic situations. And so, anything more you want to add to that? Or? No.
Yeah, we're good with that.
And he's doing very well, and so we've offered help and assistance and counseling if he desires that, and he seems just fine. And so, but just wanted to bring that up to you. So, just an FYI, I included on there the snow plowing priorities map. We'll put that out on Facebook soon to the community, and then our traffic speed studies that Trent Andrus, our staff engineers, over the last several years, we've been looking at specific areas as they've been requested, and so that map is online. You can look at some of the data. If you want more in-depth data on a specific spot, let us know and we can pull out the full report for you. And then just a couple updates on the oath of office ceremonies that'll take place there on January 3rd, and the swearing in of a few staff that is required by state code when we have a new mayor. I did send out just a couple hours ago the memo that Brian prepared to kind of outline the vacancy, filling of the vacancy that will occur in January. And so if you have questions on that, let us know. I did ask in that a question we don't need to decide tonight, but if you don't mind sending me an email on your thoughts, if we want to ask of the applicants to answer any of the questions from the Meet the Candidates night. We've done that maybe twice in the past, and so that's just an FYI if you want to look at that. And just a few other things. We met with UDOT to talk about the Jersey barrier or some sort of deflection fencing along I-15 where we had that semi-truck come off of that. They may be a couple years before they feel like they have funding to do that. They actually are looking at a study that want to have it engineered and designed and then cost estimates prepared. It was not anything that seemed to be a priority as far as immediacy on getting something installed. So we've solicited some bids for continuing the masonry wall and then putting up some bollards around our sewer lift station. And so we'll be looking at some of that stuff.
Question, Adam. What about just the temporary cement barriers that they use all the time when they're doing construction?
We asked about that. They're going to evaluate several alternatives, including the posts with cables, the posts with a solid metal piece, the temporary Jersey barriers, and then the permanent concrete 4-foot Jersey barrier. So they're going to look at that, price it all out. They expect engineering on that will be a few months, is basically what we got. And funding in the next 1 to 2 years is what we were told.
But in the meantime, could there be something temporary? Am I not understanding? They're saying 2 years to even get a temporary fixture?
That was one of the alternatives that their engineers are going to look at. I don't know on a temporary fixture. I even offered, can Lindon City help financially in some way and get reimbursed so that this could be moved up the time frame? They said they would consider that. But UDOT I will say they are notoriously short-funded. There are way too many projects in the pipeline for them to have a slush fund, and they were very hesitant to commit to any timing.
What about Ivory participating in some fashion?
They were in that meeting, and this is all fencing that's not on their property and that is off-site. And so they've put up a wall in front of their units on the freeway, and I think they feel like they've met at least that aspect of if there is an obligation of doing something there.
Other than just these meetings, is there another avenue to stimulate them? Is it through the legislature? The Court of-
I don't think this would be big enough for legislative appropriation, to be honest, but, I mean, we're talking, it's about a quarter mile of,
I just feel like we are just so vulnerable sitting there between people using the park and our lift station. It's just,
yeah, so we'll have a fence and bollards put up sooner than they would likely have a barrier. And I don't know what else to tell you, Randy.
no, I'm not
I
looking
don't-
at you, I mean, to you for that, I'm just, yeah, looking in your direction.
I mean, I met, yeah, it was their region director and their engineer and myself and Ivory, and we talked about the issues. That is the only traffic incident that they had record of along that section of the freeway. And when you look at their comments, when you look at 150,000 vehicles a day, it's a very, very low risk in their mind. And so, but it only takes that one incident, and so.
And how long, if it had been our lift station, how long for us to have rebuilt that?
Oh, it
And-
would have been catastrophic, yeah.
Yeah, and we all understand that here, and that's where
And the
I become
barrier,
exasperated.
the cement barriers, they
Upset.
at will put those all over the place when they're doing different construction things. Seems like those could be just
Placed, right?
placed as a temporary hold while they do all their research and engineering and pricing. Could they not?
It's just a little, just too common sense.
I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that, Carolyn. That seems like a very easy, reasonable thing for, but I came away frustrated. Is that fair for me to say? I vented to several of our staff, so.
Okay. I think we keep visiting that. We don't just take it, I think it's
Yeah,
too
we
important. Yeah.
meet
And we
quarterly
do,
with
We
them,
do.
with their staff and the Region 3 director. And this will be an item that we'll bring up at each of those meetings until it's followed through with. But funding, I asked, is there even a ballpark? I mean, it was in the hundreds of thousands is what they threw out. And so it's a big number to go along that section. And so it's much greater than just a tens of thousands is what they felt.
But you think the bollards and the fence that we initiate would protect
Yep.
us?
I would not wager on that. I would say it could only help, but when that semi came off, it went 350 feet and went through 2 chain link fences and 2 light bollards and down and in and out 2 different ditches.
Yeah, a typical bollard is not gonna stop us.
No. And so with Ivory, we did talk with Ivory and they seemed willing to plant some trees. And I know that's a short-term or a long-term fix, but if we put in some big significant trees along that fence line, that could help in the future. But even the concrete precast fence, they are not rated for something like that. A vehicle will go right through those things. So,
It'll slow it down significantly, I would
Yeah, I wonder if they
imagine.
can put like the gravel like on those runaway ramps that helps really slow the speed down and
I just remember vividly when UDOT staff was here, asking them when they were going to put that up. Their comment was, it's incident-driven, we've had an incident, and now we've been given a timeline that is insufficient for the protection of our citizens, and we are as
And
elected.
our assets,
Well,
significant
our assets and our
assets.
citizens, well, and those assets protect our citizens'
Exactly.
health and well-being. And this is no complaint towards staff, not one tiny little iota, but it's my frustration with the system, and I think we as elected officials have the responsibility to, put something under their saddle, a nice big bird to make sure this happens, and that's just my opinion. I've stated this all along, and so I'll continue to have that feeling until we can get something done. But
contact your
will
local state representatives if you feel like that would help. I don't know if that will,
it won't hurt, will
but
it?
it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah. Thank you for
And-
all the work you have been doing, though, Adam.
Yeah, so we'll, my assumption is we will have improvements installed before UDOT will, but they were willing to engineer something, look at alternatives and costs, and then get back to us.
Thank you.
So, several other things, sorry, here, I've got a lot tonight. Just an FYI, on December 20th, our next council meeting, there is some movement within the state to look at a settlement for the opioid crisis that occurred. We're expecting the county and the state to come on board, and then each city has to pass a resolution supporting these efforts so that we could get we're anticipating a very small amount of that settlement money based on populations, but it could go towards some programming, some police supplies or equipment or things like that. So it's a long payout over 18 years, I believe. But we will have a resolution on the next agenda item, and so it's basically saying we're agreeing to support what the county and state are gonna do. And then also as part of that meeting, under statute, we were required as cities to approve voter participation areas, which we have 4 areas that were set up a while ago. It's been a couple years. If there were ever a citizen referendum, there's certain percentages that have to be of voters that have to participate from each of these voter participation areas. The boundaries were supposed to be updated by the county, and they are behind and have sent out a message to the cities indicating they're not going to get the boundary map done. So what they would like cities to do is adopt our current boundaries as is. We have to have it done before January 1st, and then
So this
we'll.
is different than the precinct real adjustments that they're going to be doing, is that correct?
That is different, yeah. And so, just an FYI, it's status quo. We're gonna adopt our current voter precinct or voter participation boundaries at our next meeting, but it's not changing anything until we get a new map. We'll also have some fee schedule updates for the Aquatic Center. He talked to us about that a little while ago. Heads up, January 19th is the local officials day at the legislature. For anybody that wants to sign up, the Utah League of Cities and Towns, you can go on their website and register for that and then turn in a receipt for reimbursement. And then December 11th is the elected official training, if anybody wants to go through that. I've had a few individuals do that in the past, and let me know if you'd like to participate there.
What was that date on the legislature?
The January 19th, it's the local officials day, and it's on the League of Cities and Towns website. You can register. It's at the convention center up in Salt Lake. So, Mayor Acerson, we're recognizing him for his service, holding a short open house on Wednesday, December 15th, here in this room. And we kind of had to bend his arm to get a commitment on time for him from 12:30 to 1:30. So, thank you, Mayor. And then I do need to get a little bit of feedback from you on an item that's come up. We've had Doug Smith Auto from American Fork looking at a Kia dealership to be located on the parcel just immediately north of Home Depot. There's a vacant lot there. Their preliminary information shows them quite short in being able to make a deal. What has happened is the site was approved for an office warehouse development and is under contract by those developers, and they are buying it at a certain price, increasing it by 30 or 40%, and flipping it to Doug Smith. And that difference is really what's making it more difficult for Doug Smith to locate here. Mike and I have talked with several economic developments. He just stepped out, I think, so. Representatives that can help us through the process. What may be easiest on Lindon City is actually to adopt a new RDA area just in that specific lot and not involve any other taxing entities, where we could then establish it would be a new CDA on that lot, and that avenue then allows us to look at some sales tax rebates if they were to hit certain benchmarks. And my assumption is to help them close this, we would probably be in the 500,000 to $1 million on a sales tax incentive over a 10-year period would probably be in that ballpark. With Murdoch Hyundai, we did a deal that was about $500,000 in value, and it was over a 5-year period, and they hit that with no problem. And so what that deal had been set up as, we had a dollar figure that was agreed upon, and then anything that we would retain all of the sales tax revenue, and then anything above and beyond that, we split 50-50, and their portion went into an account, and after that 5-year period, they got that back. And that went towards their specific project too, an infrastructure, storm drainage. There was a grass detention basin that used to be there on the corner that we traded some property and helped them build that. But with the Doug Smith complex, this is very preliminary. But the information we've received, the legislature we've heard several comments from some of the economic development professionals. The legislature is likely to run some bills this session that would prohibit or to significantly limit commercial incentives. With intent that if cities can't incentivize retail and commercial projects, they will allow more housing. So the recommendation from the professionals we've talked with here in the last day or two is that we should do this as soon as possible. And so we've only got one meeting in December and one in January, and so we would likely, what I would like to do is loop in 2 or 3 of you to come meet with us once we get some more details from Doug Smith, some more financial information, and then we would likely contract with an economic development firm like Lewis Young, a financial consultant that could help us through this process. Setting up a new RDA, which is the noticing and some of the actions that the council has to take, it's a 60 to 90-day window. And so we could probably get that done before the legislative session starts. And in past legislation, they would usually, if there's a date, they'll say anything already in works or progress is grandfathered in. And so we'll talk more about that. Any gut reaction to that, I guess, that's all I'm looking for. There's no decision on this, but...
Make sure I understand, the shortfall is going to be between 500,000 and $1 million?
No, they are telling us it is closer to 2 million. I'm telling you my opinion. I think we could get them here for a lesser amount.
Gotcha. And how large is the piece, do you recall?
6 acres is what they're looking at.
It's expensive property.
I think it's a $4 a square foot add-on that they are looking
Yeah,
at
the
doing
flip.
from what they purchased to what they're going to be selling for. I had the opportunity to meet the Doug Smith guys, went golfing with Mike, also had lunch with the agent on the deal. I think we need to decide as a council philosophically where we stand on incentives. I think that's the big thing if you can get on board with that. Because I do think there's some opinions and some feelings out there, not necessarily in Lindon, but in the community of whether that is philosophically something we should do. My personal opinion is that Kia or Doug Smith would be top 5 sales tax year 1. I really think we'd see something very similar to Murdoch. If probably a number 2 or 3 in my opinion on our top 10 list. I'd be very in favor of what you're proposing. I also agree with Adam on, I don't think we tip our hand. I do think that the amounts that Adam's talking about are probably about where we need to be. Certainly some hesitancy of, that's not been Lindon's style. I know the Walmart, that's a story. A lot of past council members say that we got the Walmart, didn't have to come up with incentives.
That's a unicorn.
That is a very rare case. And so personally, I'm in favor, would love to be part of that committee if we start to head down that road.
I would agree with Jake on that. It's especially in light of the juxtaposition of what the legislature may be trying to do with that, and our need to be able to save that ground for the commercial entity that we are wanting it for. I'd say that we need to not be hesitant in looking at this quickly. I mean, so,
I say strike while the iron's hot.
yeah.
I think it makes perfect sense. I'd much rather have something like that there than an office building. So I would be in favor of doing something that you
Pursuing that.
suggested.
Pam?
There's always that idea of fairness to how you treat one business versus another business. So that's always an underlying thing in my mind as well that I think goes into consideration for businesses that are here in the same industry and competing. So that's words to say, I consider those types of things.
Okay.
Those are all great comments. I agree with all of them. We're looking at post-performance, so this is not any upfront, thing on the books. This is based on what they would perform and then kind of sharing some of those post-performance. I think this is, if we're going to attract, a top-performing dealership like this is the right location. We have residents who would probably not be happy if it was asked to go on State Street, but this is by the freeway. There's some synergy there with the other dealerships that are kind of high-end. And I'll tell you, I talk to other council members, other mayors of other cities. They wish they could get a dealership sometimes like this. Some have none, some would love this caliber. So I think the nature of the game is, trying to attract the right economic development partners who bring in strong revenue in the future. It's important to have these kinds of discussions.
Mayor, any thoughts?
I'll be silent on this. We'll, as it progresses. I mean, post-performance is the only way if you're gonna do something.
Correct.
But you're right about being fair. I mean, there isn't a business in town that would say, well, why didn't you do it for me? And that's a big concern. I mean, it really is, because I think historically, we've been trying to be fair across the board, making sure everyone's treated equally for the most part. And, American Fork won't be happy, because that's where they're coming from, but c'est la vie, that's how it goes. Not that we want them to stay there, they've outgrown their space there, and they're looking for an area they can expand, and the synergy's right. I mean, it's in an area that makes sense, so, I would prefer getting that number down a little bit more. But then again, it is what it is. I think they are anxious to find a space that they can grow. They're out of space. So I think, honestly, they're gonna be more willing to put a little bit more up than maybe we need to, but I don't know what that magical number is, so.
We're asking for additional financial information from them, and we'll be working with our financial consultant to assist us through that as well. So we'll find what that number, that range is, and
Where it is.
their ask right now is just based off of construction and land price, and they haven't provided any revenue component to that yet, and so that's the next step. But
I think there is a fundamental issue of fairness, but by the same token, I think once we've set this in motion, I think the fair part would be if someone else came to us and asked us to do the same thing, and we could justify that there was such a large economic benefit as this one. I think that would solve the fairness issue. But I think we have to make a choice. I mean, are we gonna do this for someone who's gonna generate a very, minor, I don't know if we need to set a benchmark as to how much, sales tax revenue is projected or whatever, but I think we could look at each situation fairly and equally, and then make a decision based on the numbers, I think. I think the equality of opportunity is what I feel comfortable with. I don't think we can treat every business the same. But, there may be disagreement on that, but that's my feelings on it.
Alexis just went through
remodel,
and
I hope they stay.
I hope they stay.
This might help them stay, I don't know.
It might, it may not, it may say, well, we put more money into refreshing our look and try to, generate sales, and across the street, you're giving money away to bring someone here, and I'm not saying that's what they're gonna say, but I think you ought to at least consider that and
Well, sure.
understand that. Cause I think, I don't wanna lose the Lexus dealership. I mean, it's,
Have they approached you in any way about an incentive or
No,
financial
they haven't.
assistance?
but
They
the
have.
likelihood of.
Okay.
I mean, they did approach us about advertising and different things that might
Yeah.
enhance their business, but they haven't, no.
Okay.
So,
So we do have an RDA in that area, but it's expired, and so that's where we would have to create a new one. And we have some funding that can be used now for certain purposes with that old RDA, but it couldn't do what we had discussed here tonight, so. Okay, there's enough interest there. We'll
Yeah, I think
get
we
something
oughta
running and
get
keep
more
digging.
info.
Anything else you wanna add to that, Mike? Okay. Thanks, Mayor. That was a lot, sorry.
No,
I'm
it's
done.
good. You good?
Yep.
Okay, let's go on to open public comment. Anyone here to make public comment?
Marley, you're leaving it right in your time. This was it.
you make her talk.
Thanks for coming.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to consent agenda. And this is, Adam, go ahead and, I mean, it's on the merit.
On the merit increases, so this is something that's already been approved in the budget, and this is just a practice that we've done that's unique to Lindon, is to look at our 6-month mark, basically, into the fiscal year and evaluate where we're at financially. Sales tax wise, we are the highest in the last 12 months as we've ever been as a city. In fact, I should have had this up here a second ago. Let me pull up.
So much of our revenues tied to sales tax, inflation on goods such as vehicles going up so much. We don't have to raise taxes to have our revenue go up. I think this is, if you're looking at our last 6 months, there's no reason we wouldn't.
We don't have to.
Yeah, we will be exceeding our revenue projections for this year, so.
Good time to leave.
Sorry, I'm not finding what I need to here really quick, but.
Saying that joke, just a second. All right.
So this blue shows each month the jump that we have in sales tax revenues in Lindon City. The red is the trend line, so each bump is a fiscal year, basically. Our last couple of years has just shot through the roof. And that is a mix of several different businesses. There's been, and just some unexpected ones that you wouldn't anticipate would it be in our top producers. The other big jump is about that time right there, the state required online sales tax for across the board. And so we've seen a huge jump on online sales and the revenues that are coming into the city. This graph is showing each month. So this is since July in this current fiscal year, the highest we've ever had. And then the prior year is that other black line, highest we've ever had in those months. And so
That's a gross number that we keep pre us sending it out
this
to.
is the number that the state sends for total, so we get a percentage of this.
So that's our net number.
And it's not ours, it is what they have paid, my understanding, what this business has paid in sales tax.
So it's a gross number pre what?
Pre-distribution to the state and everybody else,
In
and so,
Leach cities.
that's my understanding. I will get clarity on that and let you know, Jake, but,
Great.
so, very positive on sales tax revenues. Property and franchise tax, we anticipate that to be very consistent as last year. I don't see any reason not to approve this, so. There's no action other than the consent agenda, but.
Okay,
I'll make a motion then, probably, to approve the consent agenda.
motion by Randy, is there a second?
I'll second.
We'll go with Mike on that, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it passes. Thank you. Review and action on UDOT traffic signal agreements.
On this item, there are 2 agreements and are included in your staff report. Let me jump to that here. One is identifying on 200 North and State Street. We had a state legislator that was here recently that had inquired about that, and not long after that, we had this agreement sent over to us by UDOT asking this location to be added as a proposed or future signal. From our perspective as staff, I think with our engineers, the biggest concern is probably how that potential traffic, if there were a signal on 200 North State, would function on the east side on 135. The roadway's never been designed to accommodate a larger volume of traffic that a signal may disperse into that area. The width of the receiving area is not sufficient to accommodate a turn lane, and which would be required. And so there's some things that we would need to evaluate and see, would we really approve a signal there? All this agreement is doing is saying it's potentially could go there if UDOT and the city said yes. And so my impression is that this was maybe appeasing more than anything else. So just throwing that out there. It does not meet the spacing distance requirements that UDOT currently has in place for this section of State Street between signals, but they've approved some areas that are less than that when it warranted. So could be a signal there someday is all this agreement is saying. The other location on the second agreement is identifying, we have currently in place a corridor traffic signal spacing plan with UDOT. It is adding Anderson Boulevard as a proposed location for a new signal, which we are in support of. So, any questions on those? I don't think these don't harm us in any way. It's just.
I do have thoughts and concerns about the one on 200 North and State Street, and that is that I do understand the danger of the west side and the turning left and right. It can be very hairy, but I agree with you, Adam, that it's the east side that is the problematic side, and how it then filters off into that. So, I mean, if it was not a through area like it is at 400 North going the opposite direction, I can see this being a possible necessity or something to look at. But I am concerned about that east side of how it filters in and how the road is not. So those are my concerns. But I do understand the need for having some sort of safety measures there, whether it's just a right only, no left turns, I don't know, but it can get kind of hairy out there at 200 and State Street on the west side.
So I wonder is, on the master plan right now, 400 North is called out to go through the Bible Church and from the Thornton property and hook into Lakeview, and perhaps some of those patrons over there in the Premier Family Medical, that would give them another access to a light down the road, but then again, down the road and who knows when. So.
And whether they would take that opportunity to meander down that direction, it could be a while. I don't know. They would take that opportunity.
So who wrote this document?
UDOT.
So when they put this in and you say, then the city still has to say yes and UDOT has to say yes. This kind of feels like some of those things that it still feels optional, and then all of a sudden it's, well, you said yes to this and now it has to go through. And
So in this paragraph here, so with the one on State Street, so it says it's proposed. So we have a current agreement that for 700 North that is almost identical to this one, except we're adding this location. So that's worded almost the same way. This is an addendum to that current agreement. And then with State Street, we have talked with them over several years about an agreement that just says, here's the signals that we have on our master plan. UDOT's acknowledging those basically and saying, yeah, we agree. The documents indicate other signal locations could be warranted and approved. I think this is just setting it a little more in concrete. The language that we have here, it says, let's see, an intersection may be considered if a signal warrant study is approved and with approval with UDOT and the city, and then traffic signals at any of the proposed, being that one's the only one, intersections listed above will not be installed until warranted and approved by UDOT and the city. So I feel like we're covered there, Van.
I was
with
gonna
that
suggest
language.
that probably UDOT would be more reluctant to want to put something there wherever these are, if it's not warranted, even if the city was super desirous that it be done. I know they can make exceptions, but
Yeah,
my experience is that UDOT has been really loath to do anything like that without the proper warrants or so forth. I don't know that it obligates us to anything.
Well, and that's why that paragraph 2 is so important, because it expressly states that it still requires the city's approval.
Right.
And we're getting an exception to their standards, which we would have to jump through that hoop. If for some reason things changed and we really did want that signal there, we'd have to come back and go through this process again to
Sure.
say, here they're agreeing to give us an exception to that standard. And so I think we are pretty well protected.
But to Van's point, though, why is there an urgency that we enter into this agreement?
With Anderson Farms, it is for sure. We need to get that moving.
I don't
and going,
disagree with that.
And I think that this one came along part and parcel, basically.
they came across my desk separately. They weren't sent together. So this was, and that's where I had actually replied to the UDOT engineer that sent the State Street line and said, is this because of an individual's request? And he said, yes. And so that's where I said my assumption is this may be appeasing more than anything. But
Well, the thought I have is for UDOT to do the warrant studies on these areas, we would probably have to be a party to this agreement. I mean, in the future, if we say, we want you to look at it really hard, then we'd have to enter into another agreement, basically. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, does this allow them to go ahead now and to do the warrant
to
study?
do a study, it could. Yeah, and you know, when I was talking with Noah and Trent and Juan on this, even though there's concerns on 135, I think the general consensus was, well, maybe we shouldn't shut this door. Maybe it could be a benefit in the next 50 or 100 years. I mean, do we want to say absolutely no? And so that was kind of the feeling was, well, that we have requested a signal study in this location in years past, and UDOT said no because it didn't meet any of their standards. And so perhaps that's something that we just wanted to leave the door open, I think was the feeling, so.
Well, if our council's telling us it doesn't obligate us to anything, I'm okay with it.
More questions? It says review and action, so if you want to review it more, we can. Timing wise, I mean, 700 North's the most critical one, right?
Yeah, if you wanted to think more on the State Street one, we could continue that. I don't know that I have a lot of other information that I could provide to you on that. We could just say no, and that was my first response back to UDOT's engineer, and he just said, okay, here's a version without 200 North. I mean, he sent it that fast, and it was within an hour, and then that's where I kind of followed up, well, what's driving this? Was it this individual? And yes.
Yeah.
And so my assumption is
As he heads into it.
it may have been an easy out for them to say the city didn't want it and said no. And so, anyway, I'm just throwing that out there, but.
It is interesting, the properties are developing on both sides as well with some proposed new businesses, and that will potentially increase people trying to access at that nexus point. So perhaps to Brian's point, having, a foundation laid, if we did want to address traffic issues there, maybe this helps get something started where normally we would not be able to have the door opened. Just a
I
thought.
appreciate the fact that we're talking about this openly, and I think that it's important. But I'm not, me bringing up my concerns doesn't mean I'm not opposed to keeping it as a proposed option, but I'm not looking forward to going through with that at this time.
Agreed, there's just lots of issues on that 200 North
Yeah.
one.
Okay. With or without? You can make I assume we can make a proposal or
Yeah,
Whatever you want.
if someone wants to make a motion inclusive or separate. We'll see if there's support for it, either way.
I'll be happy to make the motion. It's just my iPad died, so I don't have the verbiage to make that motion.
Mary, do you have any opinions on this one?
Oh, here it
Where
is.
it's adjoining?
I mean, honestly, the 200, I mean, it's a long way away from,
Either way.
yeah. I think either way you go, I think we're okay. But I respect, if there's, our attorney has basically said we should be okay.
Yeah, and it's bolded, the city
Yeah.
has to approve it. I'm comfortable with the verbiage, but again, I understand that pathway we sometimes go down, and you can still decide, and,
And that's,
well, you
Wait.
did it.
in the end, it is a state highway, and we may not have say if the signal
Full
goes in
control.
another location, and so I don't,
Any more thoughts before I make the motion? I move to approve the UDOT traffic signal agreements as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Have a motion and a second as proposed. Any more discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think that was unanimous, okay.
May I just have one quick question regarding that? So the property, so on the east side, that corner is currently undeveloped, where there would be a right turn opportunity. And across the road, there's also a development proposed to go in there. Could we look at, one of the things that I've noticed is if you are trying to make a left-hand turn, there's not a lot of space to have then those that would desire to go right to always fit. And maybe now we're proactive with the entities that are going in there to say, let's give a little more space so there's one lane that can go right and then one where people can kind of hang out and as they're waiting to turn left. Does that make sense? As something to look
yes,
at?
I think we've already issued
yeah,
permits and approvals on both of those corners, if I'm not mistaken.
But if this is a concern that now the UDOT has come forward, should we revisit that? So we're not putting in infrastructure that's
I mean,
costly.
that, yes, I understand that. If this is 15 or 20 years out, though, I guess that's my question. Is the city initiating a traffic signal at this location?
Not a signal.
But you're
just-
initiating turn
just
lanes
a turn lane.
that a signal would function with, I guess. That's, we would be having to acquire property
Yep.
from both of these corners to put that in. I don't think we could do that at this point as an exaction and ask them to dedicate land that they've already received an
Interesting.
approval on.
Right, and I guess what's interesting is if you look at how there's that kind of neck that has to kind of tuck around because they have to come in perpendicular to the angle of State Street. I mean, that's not particularly usable space necessarily either. If a conversation were had with them, what
We
would,
can-
I think it's their space, and I think,
I mean, we can approach them, but yeah, I
It's
don't.
a hand in glove, and they're not at the same time. They're not at the right time to make that, because we're asking for it prematurely.
I mean, it wouldn't be something that we would be asking them, in my opinion, to develop or pay for it or improve, because it's not necessary for their improvement. For their site, this is an after-the-fact request by the city, you know what I mean?
Right, but for their sites, it
submitted.
could be an advantage because you can see as more folks are trying to navigate turning left and they're blocking as they're waiting to find a safe space to get out onto State Street, having a right turn area accessible for their patrons could be a benefit potentially.
We can.
I mean, it's
explore
worth
that.
it.
At least we can pull up the site plans, but at least the one on the northeast corner where
This one?
across from the park, planning commission's already, I think, decreased their landscaping, and so they're to like 10 feet instead of 20, and so I think they've got a drive-through right there.
Yeah, they do.
So I'm not sure you could,
That's the Beans and Brew or something like that, isn't it? Yeah.
there's not a lot
There's
of
some
room right
logistics.
Not a lot of
on that.
space. Okay, just curious.
You could do it easier on the, where the indoor pickleball place wants to go, on that southwest corner.
We can explore it and see if we can make something work. That's accelerating this an awful lot faster than what we had just discussed earlier. And
Just worth having a conversation since
Yeah.
those other businesses on the east side say that there's a little bit of a backup and, you know, it's hard to navigate. I'm not
Right.
suggesting a light. I was just saying,
well,
give
what that would
options.
do is create a through lane and then a right turn lane. So, because right now you just have the left
Right.
and through. And so what I think I'm understanding you say is you'd want a separate right-hand turn lane in addition to that? So
Potentially,
a
I mean,
left,
'cause
a through,
how
and a
usable is
right.
that corner?
I personally wouldn't want a through lane until you signalize it, because going across State Street, coming off the hill,
Well, people are waiting to make a left turn, and then a row of cars get stuck waiting behind them. They may not need to wait to turn left if they desire to go right.
Let me put our engineers on it and see, and we'll coordinate with these property owners and see if there's anything that we can work out before those get developed. But they've both received site plan approval.
Pickleball court, that one's struggling to get financing and with construction costs, so that one's a little behind.
It's construction.
Costs for those would be on the city. UDOT usually does not participate in those road improvements. They'll participate in the traffic light, but usually not the curb gutter, sidewalk, street things, so. Okay, we'll look into it. I'll be honest, for me, my personal opinion is more concerned of the rest of 135. If we put a light there, that's, anybody going right here is gonna take that road instead of going up to 400. And I'm concerned about the level of traffic that could be dumped onto that roadway, but, okay,
Yeah.
we'll have our engineers explore that, so, thank you.
okay, moderate income housing plan.
Please make it short.
Trying to get ahead of the state, right?
Okay, so yearly, the legislature is requiring the state, requiring city councils to review their moderate income housing plans. Before the 1st of December, we're required to submit a report to the state. The mayor and I submitted that report last week. The mayor signed that on behalf of the city, and then we're supposed to go through that report and the plan itself. So the city council adopted an amendment to their general plan for this moderate income housing plan in 2019. The legislature requires us to go through and select goals as part of that. I think we've got to select either 3 or 4 goals. So in that 2019 plan, we selected 5 goals. And so as part of that reporting process, we go through each one of those goals and evaluate how we're doing to help moderate income housing according to those goals. So I wanted to go through those goals really quickly. Let's see. So, just as a reminder also, our moderate income housing plan gives demographic information, population estimates that were given by MAG, housing projections. And so, but as we look at the first goal, our first one was to create or allow for and reduce regulations related to accessory dwelling units in residential zones. We have updated our accessory apartment ordinance the last 3 years to make it easier to do accessory apartments. The legislature last year mandated that we allow a new kind of, new type of accessory apartment that they identified called internal accessory dwelling units. We already allowed them, but that was a new term for them. And so they mandated that in every municipality that is required to submit one of these reports. And so it didn't have a much effect on us because we already allowed them. What it did was it decreased the parking requirement from 2 stalls to 1 stall. That was one of the main differences for us, but we updated that ordinance on August 16th. And so I just wanted to go over those numbers real quick. So since the last report of 2020, we've added 7 new accessory apartments in the past year. We currently have 207 legal accessory apartments, meaning that they got a building permit for those. What's been interesting is since 2008, that's as far back as I went when I wrote the Modern Income Housing Plan in 2019, but we've added 99 accessory apartments since 2008. So I think that's helped a lot with helping our goals of adding new accessory apartments.
What was that number again?
We've added 99 since 2008. Outside of the Anderson Farms development, pretty much every new single-family home that's being constructed has an accessory apartment as part of it anymore. It's kind of just the trend. And I think that's how a lot of people help afford, their homes. One other thing I wanted to pull up really quick. So we're in the process of updating our accessory apartment handbook. Mary has been going through that. She's done a great job of putting information together as an education piece. We're about ready to send this out to the public, but she's went through what are ADUs. Here's your setback requirements if you're doing an attached ADU or a detached ADU. Here's where they're allowed. That'd be in the blue and the orange. Here's your requirements if it's attached, or if it's internal. So these are the new state requirements. Here's some, examples. Here's a substantially attached by a breezeway. Here's your requirements, again, examples. So she goes through each one of those for detached as well. So this will be a great new handbook that,
Beautiful.
that we'll be able to,
Graphics, holy cow.
she's awesome with this stuff, so. So we're ready to launch this probably in the next week or so. We'll get it out on Facebook. We'll have it on our website. It'll just help people understand better the requirements for accessory apartments. So, any questions on that first strategy of reducing regulations for accessory apartments? Okay, the second goal is reduce impact fees as defined in section 11.36.102 related to low and moderate income housing. So our plan for that was to decrease the barriers for accessory apartments, which we've done. A number of years ago, the council reduced the parks impact fee from $4,500 to $1,500 for accessory apartments. And so that is one of the goals we've done to help meet that. I think one, also in our ordinance, we allow, says the city also allows moderate income housing developers to request an exemption or an exception or adjustment to impact fees. So we already have that in our code. I think one thing maybe we should discuss this is how do we continue this goal, moving it forward? So if I'd like to maybe have a discussion next year about, is that something we maybe proactively do for all moderate income housing? If a developer were to come in with moderate income housing, is that something we could proactively look at instead of making them go through a study or a report or something like that? But I'll talk a little bit more about what the state's going to maybe require us in the next legislative session. The third goal we identified was to preserve existing moderate income housing. So the city has these 3 houses right here. In the report, we identified as that's one way we're helping to preserve moderate income housing as we rent those at that 80% moderate income housing report or area. That's one way we're helping to preserve homes. Another is just to continue our R2 overlay and to disperse moderate income housing throughout the community. I thought it was interesting. I went through and calculated, we've approved 254 residential units under that R2 overlay zone since it was initiated. Going back to the 3 homes we own here, we have put in the past year $9,529 in improvements or upgrades or just maintenance, overall maintenance into those 3 homes to help preserve for those three individuals that live there, to make sure that those are well maintained. So, any questions on that goal on preserving moderate income housing? The 4th goal was utilize strategies that preserve subsidized low to moderate income units on a long-term basis. In 2000, we partnered with the Housing Authority of Utah County to provide the homes next to the park there for individuals with disabilities. So that is a long-term contract with the Housing Authority. It's 99 years. This is some of the lowest income levels at 30%. So those individuals pay approximately $473 a month for rent. They couldn't. That's a very good use of a partnership to provide those homes for those individuals. I think it was 2 years ago, we had the Housing Authority come and speak with us. I think that's always good to maybe reach out to them again and continue, make sure we're continuing that partnership, see if there's things we can continue with them as well.
Michael, quick question. Does Housing Authority also provide the statistics on those that are private owners that are engaged with them and providing housing to residents that tap into their assistance and program?
Yeah, they do. The state on their website, you can go through and see where the different housing authorities around the state are providing help. And so those are the only 3 that I found in Lindon right now.
It might be beneficial. Go ahead, Carla. No, please.
I'm aware of some other private owners that do have tenants that are with Housing Authority in the city, so.
That'd be good.
Would that be helpful to have those?
Yeah, I
as
think,
part of our
and then
report?
going back, I think those are only projects, now that I'm thinking about that a little bit more on that list, it's only projects I think that are more owned by a housing authority.
Right, so
So
I know private owners who have tenants that are with Housing Authority.
The
Yeah.
Section 8 vouchers count.
It counts for those 3, yeah, that's how we did it, was a Section 8 voucher for those, the home next to
No,
the
but I mean,
park.
if I understand what Carolyn's saying, if they're private, I mean, I owned some property years ago, and I had a tenant that had a Section 8 voucher, was getting basically subsidized housing. Can we count those?
I'd have to look into that more. We possibly could, but again, I'd have to look into that more.
So would that have to come through, like the example Mike gave, or would that be something that the state would provide that data that we have got, that a Section 8 recipient is within your city boundaries?
I think we would just have to say how we're helping to preserve that and
So
support
the
it.
state or the county would not be issuing that information to us?
Right.
Okay.
But Michael, don't we have to somewhat show that we're providing an array of housing for various demographic individuals, economic?
Yeah, but
level?
it's more what we are doing. It's not so much maybe what the
The
housing
inventory
authority's doing. It's
or-
more what are we doing to
That's what
help
I was-
support
that's what I was
that.
getting at.
Is part of it an inventory report as well, though, of the type of housing that's being offered and can be obtained within the city? Because I remember that one statistical report you provided, this was how many, multifamily, this is how many townhome, which is,
That would be good. Let me reach out to the housing authority and see how that applies. Yeah, and I'll show that chart here in a minute.
Okay.
And, yep, no, I think that's a good idea. Thank
You
you.
may be aware too that they have a new director. It's not Linnell Smith any longer.
Oh, I was not aware of that.
Yeah, she's been gone for a little while, so it would be helpful to
Yeah,
know that. So,
I think that's a good, thank you.
no, that was a provost too. You know Doug. He's on that.
Yeah, let me,
Been gone a long time. Is he still alive?
He's alive. He travels all around the world. He came to a costume party I went to dressed like the food.
and with, just one other item, with our R2 overlay zone, out of those 18 districts we have applied in the city on that map, we have about 20, in the districts, there's about 20 units that could still be constructed in those, with those 18 districts, so. Okay, next one. And then our last goal here is to allow for alternative housing types or moderate income residential development in commercial and mixed-use zones, commercial centers or employment centers. We're all aware what we've recently done with the Lindon Nursery and the Norton property. That counts towards this. So we've approved, 58 units at the Lindon Nursery and 46 townhomes and, 19 detached single-family homes on the Norton property for the zone change on that one. We've also, on that 700 North Master Plan, we've identified a transit-oriented development area. And so we've identified those in this report as helping accomplish that. So,
We would consider the Norton property as having moderate income housing?
well, it's allowing for, it just says allow for alternative housing types or moderate income residential development in commercial and mixed-use zones. So it's just allowing housing in your commercial zones. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be moderate income housing. It just says alternative housing types or moderate income housing. So real quick, we've went through this the last few years, but the state in 2019 and 2020 provided, they're calling this our gap of moderate income housing that we're supposed to work towards in that 5 years. They haven't been updating this to show us our progress. They've just been giving us, they gave us this number in 2019, said work towards it. So 30 units in that 80% AMI, 125 in the 50% AMI, and 110 in the 30% AMI. I think one thing to remember is there's not a lot of control we have over that 50 and 30% AMI. We don't build housing. We'll work with developers if they come in and are trying to do something like that. But that's something the development community usually has to get government funding to help them with as well in those lower income brackets. And then I just wanted to show just an updated chart, a couple of charts I thought was interesting. I added since this was first published in 2019 in that moderate income housing report. Here's where we're at in 2020 and 2021 with housing. You can see how many single-family homes and accessory apartments that have been built. I ran that number really quick. So there's about, with these two, over the last decade, I thought was interesting. So from 2010 to 2020, we've built almost 776 or 766 residential units. So this past decade was the second highest housing decade we've had in Lindon. And 1990 to 2000 was our highest. There was over 1,000 residential units built in that decade. So, actually, I think that, oh, sorry, I jumped charts on that. So, yeah, this was the second highest residential number of units built. This number just shows this chart just shows the number of housing units or building permits we've released the last few years. And then I thought was interesting too, they gave some estimated median incomes. So Lindon's median income jumped from 2017, it was 81,000, it jumped to 90,000. You can see I have also included Utah County, the state of Utah, and the United States in that as well. So fairly good jump in the last 4 years for that median income. So with that, I'd like to, if you have any comments on the report or on the housing plan. So the legislature, I put in your staff report. This came from the league. Looks like they're going to address a number of things next year. This was according to Meg Ryan. She said, expect the legislature to focus on implementation actions through reporting and timelines. So they're going to want more about what we're doing to implement those 5 goals. That's why I'd like to maybe come back and look at those goals again, make sure that those are still the ones we want. Consolidation of menu items, so those 24 housing goals you can choose from. Looks like they may consolidate some of those and tighten the language on them. More streamlined reporting, and then increased technical assistance for implementation. So I'm not sure where that'll come from, or who will be doing that, but those are the 5 things the league let us know that the state's looking at right now. So any questions for me?
High kudos on that, Mary's work and everything that's going to go into that. Just major kudos.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Just one clarification on that, sales tax reports that I was showing you, that is our net, that is our actual revenue.
Cool.
Sorry, I was confusing that with a different report that, we receive one that shows each individual business name that is not a public record document, and that one shows their total sales, and we get a portion of that, so sorry, I was confusing that, but.
Thanks for following up with that.
Very good.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. You have a motion, second, third, all in favor? Aye, aye, aye.
I thought that's where you were going with that look.
Increases concern.
Yeah,
Didn't have to poke you this time, huh?
yeah. Quick action. Anything I need to say?